Hello and welcome to the sixth tutorial of AutoCAD. Today we will be covering the printouts. For going through the printouts, I'm expecting all of you to know some extent about the sense of scale and what is the scale of a drawing: 1/100, 1/50/20 for system detail, 1/200, 1/1000 for urban scale. I mean, you should know this stuff, but just as a starting point, I will start to draw a A3 paper just to give you a sense of what it means. So imagine that you have this dinner table, and I'm putting A3 paper on this dinner table. So I'm drawing a rectangle. R is C inter by default. D for dimension. So 42 is the longest, the width, and then the height is 29.7. Give it a dimension. So now imagine that you leave an A3 paper on the desk, and this is the entire house. If you want to print it 1/100, this paper will be 100 times bigger. So I'm selecting the paper, SC for scale, and I'm making it 100 times bigger. Now this is my A3 paper. It's nice if you can draw your paper in AutoCAD. I will try to show you the layouts. You can do it in layouts as well. It's much easier to do it in layouts, or maybe not easier. It's a little bit more professional to do it in layouts, but first you have to learn the basics. Later we can cover the layouts as well. Now, this is our A3 paper if we want to print this 1/100. But first, let's see how it looks. So I'm pressing Ctrl P. I haven't defined anything here for the printout or plot. Let's see, go ahead and pick DWG to PDF because I don't have any printer attached, and PDF just works as a real paper if you want. I'm selecting my paper to A3. Here, what to plot? It's on display. You can put it on display. If you have very well defined limits, you can put it on limits, or you can pick a window. And then it asks you where you want to print it. This is the extent of my drawing, so I print it here. Now, the important thing here that you should be aware of is the thing that now if you print it out, that's a preview, you'll see the line thicknesses are not defined and everything is colored. So don't worry about the color now. But you see, in an architectural drawing, you want to have a very good hierarchy of line thicknesses. And there are three main ways that you can define line thicknesses very well in a drawing. So I will start with the very most basic one, and the thing that usually, students do it, but it's not the best way of doing it. But I will start by that one. So the most basic way of defining line thicknesses is just by going to layer, and here you have the line weight. So depends on the type of the drawing that you're having, like 1/100 if it's a system detail, if it's a 1/500. So you will define different line thicknesses, and you want to have a good hierarchy of line thicknesses. I start with the walls. So the walls here, usually for 1/100, I put in 0.5 or 5.3. You can go as high as 6 as well in 1/100. Depends on the type of drawing you're doing. If you hatch inside your walls, you don't have to go high. Here I hatched my walls, so I don't actually go higher than that. So I'll leave it at 0.5. Then structure, similar. Some people go higher for structure. Let's go a little bit higher. Then you will have your elevation lines, which are the lines that you see but you don't cut. So the darkest lines are the cutted lines, so line weight. I'll go for 0.2. Then steps, similar to elevation, 0.2. If you want to give it a little bit more hierarchy, you can go a little bit off, like 0.2 or something like that. 0.18 looks good. Dash comes next. I'll put it at 0.15. Axes, you want them to be visible, so let's say 25. And then let's go annotate. These are the lowest ones. So annotate I put at the smallest possible one, 0.05. Then the def point is a layer that never prints out. So if you have a layer called def point and you want something on the page but you don't want to print it, always put it in a def point, or create a layer and turn off the printing. So this is also very important. You want to make sure that all these are on, unless you don't want to print them. So if you turn any of these off, it will not show in the printing. Okay, now next comes the doors. I'll go with 0.13. I don't like to have very dark doors. And then furniture, always go lowest. I put on 0 because they're not really that technically that important. I mean, they're important, but we don't want them to overpower the walls per se. Hatches also go the smallest possible, 0. 0 means that the smallest the printer can possibly print. So in a PDF file, it will be just 1 pixel lines. Alright, now what else? Windows. Again, because I have glass there, I don't want them to be too overpowering. So I'll go, again, 0 for the windows. Because there are too many lines close to each other. Let's go, like, for example, put it at 0.9. Let's see what happens. Now, I close this. I always give something to the layer 0 because sometimes you forget that you have something in layer 0 and it prints wrong. So I'm just putting something in the middle always for layer 0 as well if I made a mistake and there is already something in layer 0. So let's press Ctrl P again for print. And now I've defined this once, the paper size and the window. So you don't have to do it again. You can go previous plot. Or you can define a plot and add it here. So if you're working on a project and you want to define something, you don't want to go through the hustle of doing this over and over again. You can define it and add it here and it will remain there. Now, I will just go over it again. So for the printer, now I'm selecting DWG to PDF. Oh, sorry, I went to JPEG. DWG to PDF. You can also print JPEG. I select the size A3. Be aware there are two A3 pages. There are horizontal and vertical ones. Depends on the type of you want to. For all papers, it's the same. You can define the type of where your drawing fits in the page, horizontal or portrait or landscape. Also here. Now I want to leave it landscape. Again, window. Pick the window. This will center the drawing. So because by default it will go to the corner. If you put the center, it will come to the center. Now the important part is the scale part. So it's fit the paper. I don't want it to be fit the paper. I mean, be aware that like there are some small margins here. Although we draw the paper there because the printer will set in a little bit while printing. The AutoCAD try to adjust for that. So although I have an A3 paper there, I have an A3 drawing there, but it will, you see, it doesn't fit with 1/10, which is at our desired scale. So usually I put some of the outer border in the depth point, not printing area, and then you want to uncheck this because while this is on, your drawing will not be accurate. So I uncheck this. For 1/100, while drawing in centimeter, you want to put 1/10. 1 millimeter equal to 10 units. Okay? This will print it 1/100. If you add difficulty understanding the printout, make your paper in the AutoCAD, scale it. If it's 1/200, make it 200 times bigger. If it's 1/50, make it 50 times bigger. Put your drawing without changing the scale in the paper. Come here. Fit the paper and it will give you an approximation of what scale you're working on if you are difficulty. But with centimeter, 1 millimeter equal to 10 units works as 1/100. Don't touch the scale here. Don't touch this one. Now let's print out. Let's preview. Okay, the line thicknesses are now correct, proper. Everything seems to be okay except for the color. So if you want to go ahead and print the color version, you can do it if you define your colors the way that you want it to be presented. That's just fine. But here we have this thing here. If you don't have it, there is a small arrow here at the bottom. You click on it, and this plot style table opens up. Here you will change it to monochrome. So when it's on monochrome. Are we recording? Yes. When it's on monochrome, it will print everything black and white, which is what you usually work in a technical architectural drawing. So, and you can see it's a pretty okay drawing. The line thicknesses, the hierarchy of lines and everything. looks fine, and everything seems to be alright. Now, this is one way. Now, let's say if I want to print this 1/200. So if you want to print it now, you right click and you say plot. It will ask you where to save it. For example, save it here. And you can see we have a very perfectly good PDF file. Usually before I go to the print office or to stationaries, if I want to print something, I usually print it to PDF before I go there, because sometimes they make mistakes and they don't know how to work with the scale properly. And sometimes, if you have a very good print office, they know absolutely AutoCAD is best to print directly out of AutoCAD on paper. But if you have somebody who is not like really knows his stuff, it's best to print it PDF and then fit it to paper at real scale when printing PDF. And you can see we have the cutted wall, and then we have the window a little bit thinner. Back in the day, we used to do all these with rapidographs, and we're using different line thicknesses to draw all this. We were even sometimes adding water to the ink to create the hatches a little bit more, let's say more transparent and less dominant. All right, so this is it. Now, imagine if I want to go ahead and print this 1/200 now. So I press Ctrl P. Here, select previous plot because I've already defined everything. I said if you want to add this to your style, go ahead and add it. So if you close the file, you open it again, it will all remain here. You don't have to change anything. Now, if I make this 1/20, you can see the preview here. It gets smaller, and now my drawing is 1/20. But as you can see, these line thicknesses are not proper for 1/20. So I have to go back, open up my layer dialog box, and start changing all the line thicknesses over and over again, which can be frustrating if you're trying to have a kind of a fast workflow. Now, the way to do that is actually by defining plot style. If you remember at the beginning of the course, I asked you when selecting colors for the layers to stick with these basic colors. And there is a reason for that, because they're easier to define. If you have here, you have to remember the name of the color, like 69, this one, 65, 60. So you have to go and remember all these, and you have to then make note of this. The color index, AutoCAD color index. But these ones are much easier to define. So usually when you look at the professional drawing, they have the hierarchy of line thicknesses according to the color. So everything, for example, that will be 0.2 millimeter, it will be in green. Everything that be in 0.01 gray will be like in gray. Everything in 0.18 will be like yellow. So they have their own kind of color scheme. And this is one of the ways. We have another way, the style type, but we have the color base print by default. In AutoCAD by default, this one is on. It should be .ctb. This is important. If this is stb, you have to change it. If it's stb, you have to type down in the command line convert plot style. I will show you when we go there. But you have to make sure for this step, if you want to practice the color base, it should be on CTB. C is for color. Now, you select here this small box, you check the box. You go to the plot style table editor. In the plot style table editor, you see the basic colors, the first 9 colors, they're all here, up here. And now we can, according to the color, start assigning different line thicknesses. So here, before doing that, I will go to the general. Let's say form view, and I save it as something. So I save it as, let's say, 1/100 my style. So you can give it a proper name, and this will remain there. Wherever you want to print something, some of these stuff, for example, similar with the dimension line, similar with this one, many settings in AutoCAD. If you do it once properly, you can keep using those elements forever, basically. So you don't have to do this, and you will find a workflow. Like if you're an architecture student and you find a workflow, it will make your job much faster. So if every time you draw, you know your color scheme, you define your layers beforehand, you know which color goes for what line thicknesses, you will have much easier time of finishing your design projects faster. So like for example, let's say, okay, I'll go with the colors now. Red is for the structure here. So it's black. I'm trying to define a 1/100 style. So I don't want it to be grayscale. Before doing that, actually, let me show you. So there is a grayscale by default. If you go into the grayscale, let's ask you, are you sure? Let me go to previous plot. Change this to grayscale. Preview. And you see, it sets the grayscale according to the color of the line. For example, the yellow ones get really very light gray, and then according like the green one, you see they're a little bit darker, but it's not the best way of doing that. Some colors depend, because we already touched that part, will remain their own color. So you have to define this properly. Now I go to previous again. Now let's see if it's saved. 1/100 my style. Yes. So I'm clicking on this and I start to define this color. So red I'm using for structure and for the axis here. Maybe that's not the best way. Maybe I have to go and change the axis layer to something else. So because it will be very dark if it's in the structure. So I didn't actually do a very good job of defining. But let's go ahead and check this axis layer. I don't have to select these. Sorry about that. Let's axis. Let me change it to something else. Remember, this color index 7 is black in printouts and it shows white in AutoCAD. So if you're looking for black, this is color number 7. These will be like, if you ever pick this 255, it will print out white because it's white and white in reality in the paper. So it doesn't actually print out anything unless you have a printer that can pop out like white ink on a black paper or something like that, which I haven't heard of. Alright, so let me pick something else like color 10. Let me give it color 10. I know that the color 10 will be the axis now. Okay, now let me click on Ctrl P. It might look a little bit complicated, but the point being that you have to do it once. So for each scale, so I'll prepare one for 100, and then I'll prepare one for 100, and then I'll prepare one for 1/200, 1/500. So you define your styles, and then you can use it indefinitely. It will make your job much faster. So red, color black, because I'm defining a grayscale, actually a black and white drawing here. So grayscale off. Don't touch these because you can add different types of like pen, like you say, if virtual pen, like imperfections or those kind of things. You can make it sketchy if you want. I'll show you like maybe how to do some of that as well. So later, so line type and line weight. So line weight for this one, let's set it to 1/50, or let's say 53. And okay, this is okay. I'll go to the next line, yellow, which is my annotation and my furniture. This one I don't want it to be that dominant. So line weight by default is on object. So if I don't change it, it will print it as it's defined by the layer. So when I change it, it overwrites the layer line thickness that I've already defined. Now let's say 0.1 looks okay for this one. Green is for my doors here. So go ahead, 0.18. Color number 4 is for the windows. So again, because this is the glass, I'll go and put like 0.05. And the thing here, now you can actually add some, you can add more color here. Like you can make it grayscale if you want. You can have your grayscale on. And you can change the color, and it will render it grayscale. What I like to do, I like to give it a little bit transparent. It does the same thing if I want to make it a little bit lighter. So let me go ahead and put this 70%. So we'll print it a little bit lighter. Go to color 5. Let's see if I have any 5. I don't have any 5. But just in case, leave it as a by object. Okay, color number 6 will be my elevation lines. So again, line weight 0.2. This is okay. Color number 7, which will be my walls. Let's go ahead and put this to 0.5. Color number 8. I guess it's for my hatches. So let's go ahead and make sure that this is 0. And I can change the screening to 50% as well. Like to make it really, really light. Or maybe make it a little bit thicker and maybe a little bit lighter. To give it a kind of a better presentation, let me go ahead, because I usually use these two colors for those specific reasons. Makes the drawing read much easier. So I'm checking the screening, and I'm which is basically the transparent, or let's say the weight of that line, not the weight, the density of the color, how it prints out. You can go and like change different like line endings. For example, if you have the walls, which I usually like to do, the color 7 and the structure, the thickest line. I don't want to, when it prints out, when it's being printed out, I don't like to see the edges curvy. So I usually go and check the square. Same for the structure. Let me go ahead and check the square. Line join as well, you can define this, but I'm not touching this now. Leave it as it is. Now let's save and close. Let's preview, see how it looks. I have to change my scale to 1/100 here, because this is a scale for 1/100. Now, preview. Okay. Now you see, it looks okay. Now I have my like ready-made print style, and for any other drawing that I use the same color scheme, if I go there, I can easily just import the layer, the plot style, and I can easily print it out. So I forgot something. I add a layer, I add the color 10. So let's exit this. Again, for the color 10, my axis, let's go ahead and use 0.2. Okay. Now for the other thing, for the hatches, let me go ahead and make sure that which layer, which color are my hatches. Let me make this hatch a little bit denser so you'll see the difference. Let's say 50. No. 50. Okay, 5. Okay, 1. All right, so it will make the point. So now let me make sure that what color, 253. So I did pick a different line. Let me change this color to this one, color number 8. Okay, now Control P, and you see I set the color for this particular color number 8 to 50%. Now this will render render it a little bit more transparent. So let's say preview. Now you can see, although it's very dense, it's very light, and it doesn't actually overpower everything else. If you want to make it lighter, of course, you can always come back. You have to play with this until you find what perfectly suits the drawing. So it depends on the scale. It highly depends on scale. So let's say if I go to 25, let's go crazy low. Okay, save and close, preview. And now you see it's just not even there anymore. It's just a very light gray, almost invisible hatch. And you can see it here when you print it out, actually, because this is a monitor. When you print it out, you'll see when it's in 25, it's almost non-existent. So I usually don't go below 50. You can have different color scheme for the hatches inside the wall. And for the hatches for the... let me go ahead and make it back to 50. Save and close, preview. So I have my color scheme now here. to follow a routine in your color scheme if you want to use the color style printing, which is many people are doing this. Many people are defining their printout patterns with the color scheme, which is something very useful to know.